All right, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Doug Sandler on this side of the microphone. On that side of the microphone in muggy South Florida, Mr. John Browning. Muggy is an East Coast word, isn't it?
I think it is. I think so. Yeah, it rained today a little bit, and we are thinking, oh, maybe we'll get rid of some of the humidity, and just made it worse. So,
So, if you are a frequent watcher or viewer or listener to the podcast, you definitely have to take a moment and check out the episodes that John did with a couple of guests over the last couple of months. Most recently, had a Goldman Sachs team member that what do you call it? I mean, there's like such an elite group of people at Goldman Sachs. What do you call them? Team members or the elite? What would you?
team members. I mean, if you manage to land a job at Goldman, it's like getting in. It's like getting into Harvard or Yale, and except you actually get real world experience, and it is brutal to work there. Like when I worked
Really?
in Morgan Stanley, it was brutal. Goldman Sachs is more brutal.
Now, what makes working at one firm versus another more brutal? Is it the number of dials that they expect, or the number or the amount of quality or quantity leads or business that you bring in the door, or is it something different?
Well, it depends on your role, but bottom line is they expect, especially when you first are starting, they expect a ridiculous amount of hours.
Mm.
So they expect you in early, staying late, working weekends, and it goes against kind of what I decided later on, which is build your best life, not your portfolio. But it's some of that is just when you're younger, you got to pay those dues.
Yep.
It's a good idea to pay those dues because that's how you learn. And the good thing about it is they allow you to make mistakes. You do get in trouble for those mistakes, and there's some painful consequences for those, but they never put you quite in the position to lose your job
Mm.
until you
Understood.
start moving up. You know what I'm saying there? It's there's nothing better than a little bit of pain without dying to to
Strengthen you.
actually teach you.
Yeah, to
And
forge you.
that's what I did at Morgan Stanley. I mean, I'm first to admit that's where I made some of my, biggest mistakes that I still think about, and they sort of rule my processes and systems that I have in place today.
Well, I don't think they let me through the past the security desk at Goldman Sachs. So even just as a guest, not that I'm wielding anything other than just my wit, but at the same time, no, that's very good. And again, if those of you that are in our listening and watching community, that episode is it Marielle? Is it Dagison? Is that how you say your last name?
Augustine, yeah. Mhm.
And then you also did another episode with Jordan LaBelle, and I think that may have come from somebody that was on my show originally, and he's a good guy too. Really ambitious, young professionals that are working their way to the top of their industries, and it's good to see both of those interviews that you did.
Yeah, and both of them started their own businesses. They both have great experience, but they're still very young. It's really impressive what both of them have done. And I like having those folks on the podcast and saying, what makes it work, right? As opposed to
It's like the exact opposite. Look, Doug, you're on the other side of that hill now. You're kind of coasting downhill now. It's like, the struggle is all over. Now it's all over. I was listening. I was just shaping the retort that I was going to have, as opposed to the old has-beens that you're talking to right now.
but we have fun.
Yeah, but we do have fun. And speaking of fun, it is interesting. One of the topics that you brought up today when you sent me the email before, as you are, oftentimes will do, you'll send me hey, here's the stuff that I want to talk about on the episode. What got you here will not get you there. And I love that because while yes, I'm an old guy, maybe even a little older than you, I don't adhere or apply to the philosophy that everything that I did back in my youth will get me to my adulthood and beyond in fine form. I do feel like you always have to roll with the punches. So I would love to know a little bit more about what got you here won't get you there.
I run into this all the time, and it always amazes me that, like, one of my closest, dearest friends, right, engineer, brilliant, absolutely patents, like patents you would recognize in his name. And he's a big, hey, I did it this way for my entire career. He's older than I am. I did it this way for my entire career. Well, I invested it this way forever, and it worked for me. Well, here's the problem with that when you retire, right? Generally speaking, when you retire, you're going to need to draw down on that income
Hmm.
from all the stuff that you saved before. So you're in growth mode, right, for 30 years, 40 years, or whatever. And if you stay in growth mode when you retire, that puts you at tremendous risk in terms of sequence of returns risk, which we've talked about here
Yep,
on
of
the
course.
podcast before. And also the market change, in engineering, right, which he was a part of, things changed. That was his whole job, is to innovate and make things better, more efficient, everything like that. Well, the investment marketplace has gotten better, more efficient, and there are more things available now than there were to regular people, right, like you and me, rather than just the ultra high net worth, the one percenters. Some of those things are available now to just the regular people like you and me.
Well, and as technology really increases, it gives us access to so much more. I mean, even some online tools, investment programs that are there, apps. Just the fact that basically it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that you have access to the markets where you didn't have that kind of access before. Even little stuff like that, just your methodology and how you actually are able to touch the market. But talk about like the attitude or maybe some of the philosophy, the difference from I'm in my growth phase as opposed to I'm going to be drawing this down. So I'm now in a whole different phase of my life. How does that help you shape someone's financial outlook when it comes to just their age?
So when you're a little younger and you got a long run rate, right? You got a fairly significant amount of time, let's say, before you're going to need to retire. You can afford a major drawdown, a major crash in the market. You can afford that. You can absorb that. You've got time to make up that. As you draw closer to retirement, not so much. Now, one of the things I want to be very careful about here is some people they say, well, when you're younger, just buy that, find Nvidia, find find the SMCI, find that, hot stock, and just
Right.
go all in. And you can do really, really well if
If you pick the
you
right
hit it
one.
right. And if you're patient, like, I always love these things where they say, oh, if you would have invested in Amazon at $1 a share, wow, you'd be a billionaire today, that kind of stuff. The problem is the percentage of people that were able to stay in Amazon, Tesla, all those really cool companies that we talk about are very, very small. Because when it went up to, say, 100, and they're like, oh, I made all my money, they got out, and then it plummeted back down to $2 a share, and
Right.
everybody got out at a
Right.
loss
Right.
often.
Right.
And it's that staying power that you have when you're younger. And the other thing, even when you're younger, I would suggest for most people, number one, don't try and just find one hot stock or even five or six. That diversification matters, but also remember your income even when you're younger, because one of the most powerful things that I have seen, and I've seen multiple studies on this, and I'm going to be very careful when I say this, you would have to be better than God if you were to beat dollar cost averaging, which
Right.
is
Right.
putting dollars in on a consistent basis, month after month, week after week, at least year after year. And so God, right, may have just picked the bottoms, pick the bottom, sell the top, pick the bottom, sell the top. Even then, you don't beat that. You can't beat dollar cost averaging over time consistently. And there's a bunch of studies out there that show it, and it's a little bit incredible, and you don't really believe it at first until you actually see the math behind it.
It's
So
sometimes it's not just the pick though, it's also the product itself, right? I mean, there's different,
sure.
you have to think different products as you enter different phases of your getting close to growth accumulation. You're buying it down, you're getting close to retirement. Now you're in retirement. It's not just about the pick, the stock pick, isn't it about the products that you're looking at too?
Absolutely. And the sector, it's you may not want to be overweighted towards something that's highly volatile like the tech market or something like that. You might be want to weight that a little bit less. Um, and the idea of the 60-40 portfolio, which I love to trash, right? If, by the way, if that ever changes, if the 60-40 portfolio, the 60% in equities, 40% in bonds, if that ever comes back, I will be the first to let you know. I will come on the podcast and say, hey, it's back, baby.
That'll be
And
the
it's
same
working.
day that leisure suits and bell-bottom jeans come back, and
Hey,
they have at some point. They've come back and then they go out again. Plaid comes back every once in a while. Paisleys come back every once in a while.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, it may, and there's an argument now, given that it looks as though, and we don't know, but it looks as though we're probably going to get a rate cut by the Fed, here in late 2024, early 2025. I'm dating the podcast. I'm not supposed to do that, but there's an argument to maybe allocate a little bit towards traditional bonds, but I would argue that there's better products or instruments to use to get your income
One
at
of the
this.
things that you brought up in this in the exchange of, hey, I want to talk about this and make sure that our audience is hearing a little bit more about this, are some of the fastest ways to run out of money in retirement. And I think each one of these has a significant amount of value. And even if you have heard these in various ways in our listening community before, I think it's important to put these things together. So could you cover the three fastest ways to run out of money in retirement, John?
Yeah, these are my definitions, not investment advice or anything like that, as always, right, on this podcast. But in my opinion, what I have seen over 30 years, the fastest way to run out of money in retirement is don't pay any attention to consistent, reliable income. Just don't pay any attention to that income component. That's a good way to run out of money.
Well, so share what that means for those that might be more like layman. Okay, I'm asking you because I don't know what that means. So tell me what that means because I want to make sure I'm avoiding that also.
So if you've got a portfolio of all, say, growth stocks that pay very little or just none at all income in the form of dividends,
Hmm.
um, that's a good way to run out of money in retirement if you're at or very near to retirement, because that's not going to support unless you have millions upon millions of dollars and your lifestyle is very low in terms of what you spend, which is a very unusual combination. Then that's a great way to run out of money in retirement because of that sequence of returns risk, which is when the market goes down or a particular security goes down, if you have to sell to meet your monthly need to pay
Mm.
your mortgage, your utilities, your insurance, or whatever, and the market is down, you're forced to sell at a lower price. And then you have less money working for you to appreciate when you have that recovery.
Double
If you
whammy.
have consistent income that's covering your basic monthly needs over time, much better, much less likely you're going to run out of money in retirement.
All right. So the fastest way to run out of money in retirement, or number one of three, is don't pay any attention to consistent, reliable income streams. Okay. What is the second way that that one could potentially run out of money in retirement?
Second thing that I see, and I see it a lot because my wife and I are very involved in the senior care industry and have been for many, many years, decades, is to pay absolutely no attention to the likelihood or possibility that you will have a healthcare event that will cause significant expenses, such as would be covered by long-term care insurance. That's a great way to run out of money in retirement really, really fast.
So that again, for those of you in our community, that talks about it's not necessarily the product or the pick that you're looking at, the stock pick. It's the product that you're looking at. You mentioned something long term care insurance. At what point does somebody need to think about or discuss with their partner or with their broker or somebody that their advisor? What time do they need to in their lifetime think about health or long-term care?
I think it's great to at least be talking about it early on, but certainly as you get into your 40s, 50s, it's a great time. But it's not too late. It used to be, again, the market changes, right? It used to be too late to really talk about it when you were 60, 70 years old.
Hmm.
It's not too late to talk about it because there have been changes in the marketplace where you can get access to long-term care insurance right up until you're 79. As long as you're not 80. About 80 is when the insurance companies are like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. But there are ways to secure long-term care insurance right up into your late 70s.
And I would have to guess, people are living longer now. So that would probably be another reason why, not that you want to wait until you're 79 years old to buy long-term healthcare, long-term insurance, but long-term care insurance. But it is probably a little bit more excusable now to wait a little longer, or at least to not pull the trigger on it until you get a little bit further. People are living healthier longer, it seems like nowadays, as they were in our parents' generation.
That's right. And those traditional long-term care insurance policies where you pay a premium, there's no cash value to it. Those still exist and they're fine, except you've got to realize if you purchase one of those in your 40s and you stay healthy through your 80s, you've paid
Hmm.
probably way more into it than you're ever going to get out of it. And that's what people don't like. They don't like that idea.
Any
So my
specific any specific thing that they want to be looking for as they are talking about long-term care insurance? It sounds like there's like the term portion, and then is there a whole lifestyle of
There
long-term
is.
care? Is there?
Yeah, that's what I typically recommend for people is essentially it's either a life insurance policy, and there's reasons to buy a life insurance policy versus an annuity, depends on your situation. But there's also that annuity that you can buy that has a long-term care feature to it. It really does not, it's not expensive at all, and it's so worth it. My wife and I see this happen all the time. It is heartbreaking to watch somebody who has done very well in their life suddenly have things just evaporate into the long-term care system.
Hmm.
And yes, we do see more of it down here in Florida than anywhere else, I think, but it's
Yeah,
it's
health
terrible to watch.
health events happen, and many of which you can't predict. So make sure you're taking into account the possibility that that could be happening in your life as well. All right, so we have the top two. They're not paying enough attention to consistent, reliable income streams, and if you want to run out of money in retirement, you don't worry about having a healthcare event and having to go into long-term care. What is the third fastest way that people are running out of money in retirement, John?
Well, just don't pay any attention to diversification. don't don't just invest in one or two stocks, or just invest in the stock market and no other asset class. Don't diversify at all. That's another pretty good way to potentially run out of money in retirement.
That kind of goes back to like the parents and grandparents generation. They went to work for AT&T. They put their money in the AT&T stock as a pension, and their pension continued to pay them until forever, and until they passed. That is no longer the case with what's going on. Diversification is essential. I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, it's like, well, we were just talking about that with Marielle, right? On that podcast a week or two ago. And she was pointing out the fact that the 401k is a fairly new phenomenon. Um, I've been very familiar with it but it really was just kind of starting when I got started. I'm aging myself here, but it used to be that you're right, the pension would sort of take care of you. Like my dad, his pension, was taking care of him. Now we are responsible. Most people, unless you work for like the city or the government or something like that, most of us are responsible for our own retirement.
Hmm.
It's not even, it's in some states it is mandated that you participate, but you can opt out of your 401k. And a lot of people do because they're being short-sighted or they
Totally.
desperately need their income, or think they desperately need their current income. And it just, you just don't realize how much you need. I mean, we complain about Social Security, and there's a lot of press out there, oh, it's going away. Listen, Social Security, I really don't think is ever going to go away.
Hmm.
It may change over time and all that, but especially for anybody over 50, it's not going away. And it's one of the most wonderful things. It's the government pension program and guaranteed income for life.
Yep.
And there's a whole, you know, there's a whole strategy for how you take Social Security. There's a whole way of thinking about that. So uh, the the idea that you wouldn't at least participate in your 401k is just like shooting yourself right in the foot.
I say this to my son all the time because he's early on in his career, and he's always battling with the do I need it now or can I save it for later mode. And I'm like, look, 401k, they're giving you free money. That's number one. Secondly, because oftentimes your employer will match a portion of your contribution.
Often.
And the other thing is, once you have it taken out once or twice, you don't even miss it anymore. So it's like, it just is a natural part of this is my paycheck and this is what gets to be spent. Automatic savings. I can't imagine anybody not wanting to take full advantage of free money that's coming in their direction. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah. But I see that all the time when I'm working with small businesses and 401ks, is there's a whole group of people that just say, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm taking all my income. And there's even a calculation, I think it's right around 2.5%, because if you defer 2.5% or somewhere around in there, you literally see no change in your take-home pay. But you can't get people to believe the math, and so they just
Right.
don't do it.
All right, let's wrap up on the what got you here won't get you there category or topic of today's episode, and talk to me about reducing taxes in retirement. Is that all is that something that has changed over the years? I know there's been so many new programs with all of the different tax deferred, tax deductible, all the different things that are out there. What has changed?
Well, I mean, the advent of the Roth IRA is a big one. But keep in mind that it's not always a good idea. I even hear financial advisors advising their clients it's always a good idea to invest in a Roth because it'll be tax free when you withdraw it in retirement. Well, not if you're in a higher tax bracket right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of rolling your regular IRA or regular 401k into a Roth, great idea, unless you're in a higher tax bracket. And what we do is we run what we call the tax lab. And we can show people graphically based on their situation what their next dollar is going to be taxed at.
Mm.
And that can inform us of when and how much to roll, because you don't have to roll everything into a Roth. You do partial Roth conversions. And often the answer is don't even do it until you're actually in retirement and you can control to some degree your income, because you can bring your income down maybe in 1 year, up in another. The only entity that cares whether you take the cash flow in December or January is the government.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You really don't care as long as the cash is there for you to spend as you need it. So take more of it in December, less of it for the next year. You drop your income. That might be the year that you then roll some into the Roth at a lower tax bracket. There's all sorts of strategies and tactics around that. And it makes an enormous difference. People are like, well, I have to pay my taxes anyway. Well, yes, but by controlling the timing of your income and when you pay those taxes, you can make a huge difference. And if you're fighting the tax man every single time you make a withdrawal, say you need to withdraw 4 or 5% per year to maintain your style of life, not only do you have to do that, but you have to do that 4 or 5% to maintain your lifestyle,
Mm.
plus whatever you have to pay the tax man, draws down a whole lot quicker.
All right, lots of questions answered, but still many on the table that need to be answered. We can't do it all on the show. We don't know what all of your questions are. What would be the best way to get their questions answered? John, now is your chance.
You know what? Reach out to us. It is super easy, and there's lots of free information. If you're like, oh, I don't want to talk to that guy, he's scary. Hopefully, you don't think that.
I
But
hope you don't think that. Not John. Teddy bear.
I am really not scary. I love to help people, and I'm not going to try and sell you anything. I'll just tell you what I know and what I can. And I'll spend up to, I do have a limit because I do have to eat. I will spend up to 30 minutes with anybody.
Wow. Okay.
And chat with them about their particular situation. But reach out to us at guardianrockwealth.com, or you can text that number that's right down at the bottom of my screen, and we'll put it in the show notes. Text the word life. So get out your cell phone, text 321-421-5213. Put the word life in there, and you'll get a link to my digital business card. You can schedule some time on my calendar. Just look at all the free stuff that's there, which is a lot.
John, it's almost time for you to get one of those newfangled QR codes. You ever seen those QR codes where you can actually
I've
just
got a
hold...
whole sheet.
Oh,
I've got
you
a
do?
sheet of QR codes. Yes.
So you could hold your phone up to the screen and it will magically tell you what website we want to send you to. At some point, we will have to bring that out to the show. We'll have to do the John Browning Building Your Life and Your Portfolio QR code. It'll be right there.
It'll be there. Yes, we're going to do that.
Hey, for those in our listening audience, make sure you check the links in the show notes, and you'll get John's that cell phone number so you can text, and you'll get all the other information as well, including access to guardianrockwealth.com. John, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your expertise, and thanks for opening up a lot of opportunity for people's questions to be answered. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks. See you next week.